Hello, Guardians. It is Ebontis here, and today Bungie dropped a lot more information about Beyond Light with a trailer that dropped during Gamescom. Now, we got a lot of information about Stasis and a lot about Europa, so this video is going to focus on Europa, kind of looking through screenshots of the destination, seeing all the different places that we can explore. And the second video that I'm going to upload literally as soon as I'm done with this one is going to be all about Stasis Power. So if you want to see that one, hit that subscribe button. I'll get that one to you guys very soon. Other than that, let's talk about Europa. This place looks awesome. All right, so we got a lot of shots of the planet itself today, so I'm going to kind of work from the top of the elevation of the planet all the way down to kind of almost the underground section, but I wanted to show you guys this shot right here for just a second. This is actually what the orbit screen is going to look like, so you actually get to see Jupiter kind of in the background and kind of the cracked Earth of Europa itself. Shadow thought it was just a cool one, but let's actually jump into the places we're going to be exploring. So the first one is going to be these buildings that we can see kind of pretty well in this picture, and there's a couple other ones that I'll sprinkle throughout as well. These buildings seem to be where whatever, civilization was on Europa before, which I'm sure we're going to go learn about since we haven't been there, at least in our Guardians' lives. These buildings look like they used to be pretty substantial, and they have either been abandoned for a long time, they've deteriorated, they're not doing so hot. But also you can see in this picture we've got a fallen... Maybe it's a ship that's parked on top, just some fallen architecture. Maybe they've built something on top of this building. But you can definitely tell it's fallen. Very characteristic of fallen architecture with this thing above. Maybe it's one that's just parked up here and it's floating above, but it's hard to tell. But also you can see down on the platform below that we've got a Guardian sitting down there for scale. So this is, for one, extremely high up because we know the pyramid ship is massive, by the way, just by its scale, sitting out on a big giant sheet of ice, and then we've got some exploration we'll do down there. These towers are substantially tall. We'll kind of get a picture that shows where these things look like, and the Guardian looks pretty damn small. So the scale of, I don't know if we're going to just, maybe this tower is part of a mission, maybe it's the main tower in the city that we kind of go up to for some campaign stuff, not sure. But overall, just the size of the vertical nature of this tower, that in and of itself is a cool place to start. Now, from what looks like a different angle, potentially is kind of the other side of this shot. Jupiter looking fantastic in the background, as you guys can see, and we've got all these structures that either have been overcome by all of the ice that's blowing around. They have sideways icicles on them, so it's must be a state of constant blizzard in this area. But you can also see, if you look up in the kind of the one structure that's kind of sticking up into Jupiter, it looks like there's kind of that little round ring around the edge that may have been where the Guardian was standing. So scale from here to there, pretty substantially large, and also the vertical nature of the towers. We might be doing some climbing, so I kind of like anytime games go vertical, always gives it another, layer of depth, as opposed to just driving around on the same floor, basically, like level 1 the whole time. Kind of boring, but if you got, a basement floor and level 2, 3, and 4 going up, kind of like the fact that we might see some verticality to this planet. Crossing my fingers, at least hoping that tower is something fairly cool. Now, as I said, Europa itself is a pretty snow-covered place and also very cold, so the weather effects are shown fairly well in this picture. You can tell you've got the Guardians very tiny, kind of in the bottom left-hand corner, and you can see the snow going through, a little bit of fog and haze, and you also get to see this satellite. You can see those sideways icicles. I'm sure there's a name for those on the satellite that looks like it's also deteriorating as well. This is probably going to be some, inhabitable structure. Maybe we'll be fighting some enemies in there. But these broken, frozen paths that we're going to be traveling along could possibly go anywhere between here and where we're going. I really honestly wonder about the scale of this planet. Very, very curious to get my hands on it in November. Now, I will show more gameplay as we go through this thing, but this one shot right here is kind of cool because you can see the pyramid ship in the background. We've obviously are fighting Fallen in the foreground. There's some Fallen structures over here. Maybe it's like a small little area where it used to be inhabited. But again, just open snow area fighting. Almost the skybox looks like it's the pyramid. I'm kind of curious if we actually get to the pyramid, if we eventually get there, if it's part of the raid. I don't know. It seems really, really far away, and I don't know if we're going to drive across the lake and get over there, or if it's just going to be a separate landing zone. Still curious how the pyramid interacts with just the map overall, because it seems fairly far away. Curious if we'll actually be able to drive there, if it's just we have to go land there because the drive is too far. This is another cool shot as well. This is from the B-roll, so you can see the satellite over on the left. You can see Jupiter being basically, almost view completely obstructed by the large fallen ship. But this is when we also start to see the Vex on the far right. Vex have those like rectangular pillars, and then they always seem to construct them in triangular fashion. So we've got a couple of those on the right. Fallen look like they're on the left. Kind of a big, sprawling look at what some of this, most of the explorable area could look like. But again, definitely going to be fighting some Fallen. Now, this screenshot here is a really cool one. I don't know if it's just a cinematic or, again, just showing a different angle, but we have a couple different shots of this so you guys can see it. This one, again, this is a completely different angle. You can see the caverns down below. You can see the Vex, pillars sticking out of the ground. On the far left side, you see that structure again, those towers might be. And then on the tiny front left here in the foreground, you can see 3 little speeder bikes. Again, driving through these canyons might be cool, but the scale of the planet still seems pretty substantial. Again, crossing my fingers, have no idea until we get there, but it feels like this planet hopefully is going to be EDZ, Nessus sized. It's got to be a pretty big one because as we are losing some content, they want to bring in hopefully something big. We get a closer shot up here of the actual Vex architecture. Again, Vex are actually fighting Fallen, so those are 2 races it seems like we're going to be dealing with on this planet. We know the Fallen, of course, with Aramis and the House of Darkness, but we also know Vex seem to want to have something to do with the darkness. They always do, so these 2 seem to be the ones combating for the pyramid. Whatever powers it's got, we'll definitely have to see. But of course, you have the backdrop of, those structures that look like they're basically plastered all over Io. Same looking things here, so of course, Vex are defending their territory. Now, this is a shot from the trailer. I didn't quite have a whole lot of context for it before, but we have a couple pieces in this shot and the next one that are going to kind of give you a lot of basically where you're going to see this place a lot is because the 3 figures like in the distance, they're actually very important. They're the NPCs we're going to deal with, and I'll show you guys a better shot of that in a second. But here you can see the Guardians making some paths in the snow, always very cool. Now we also get to see the big ice cliffs, and there's a couple shots that show this really well. But the ice cliffs themselves, for one, seem fairly substantial. 2, connect to the underground, which I'll get to as kind of the final part of what this all looks like. And 3, if you zoom in on the far left side, and you look what looks to be kind of the smoother blue section, there's a red undertone in there. So let me switch over to the next picture and show you guys more of what I'm talking about. This picture here shows it as best as I know how to do. You've got this large ice cliff, but in it, especially again, if you focus on the left side, I can't figure out what that is. I don't know if it's like darkness energy. Is it just the composition of the planet itself and just that red is some chemical compound that makes it look that way? But those red, veiny, energy-looking things underneath the ice look really cool, and you'll notice that throughout in a couple different places, whether it be underground or above ground. Red little energy, whatever it is in the ice. I just don't know if it's going to have any tie-in to the story. But this little structure that we see here seems like our main base of operations. It's not very big, obviously. It seems like a little snow hut, and there's one campfire out in front. But you can see there are a couple doors. There's one shot where I think we actually get to see inside of it, but that's not the main focus. The main focus is the 3 people standing in front of it. And here they are. So if I zoom in on these 3, you'll notice they're fairly important. These 3 are our main NPCs that we got from the trailer. The one on the right is obviously Eris. She's holding the big green ball. She's got her kind of spotted cloak over her head, green eyes, 100% Eris on the right. Far left of the 3, leaning, kicking back, being casual self, that, without a doubt, is going to be the Drifter. He's got the brown patches on his shoulders with those little bit of kind of like bone spine things. Definitely the Drifter. And then closest to us here, in the front of the fire, we have the Stranger. Now, we get to interact with her. She honestly looks really cool. I'm very curious to see if how close she is tied with the story, if she's going to be the ongoing narrative. It was Destiny 1, hey, here's my Stranger's rifle, and see ya. Now we actually get to see her again. I am so curious if they explain the fact that she left, what's going on. Really, really curious how they tie the Stranger back into this one, but also Eris and the Drifter. I wonder if we're going to honestly be interacting with all 3 characters, different quest lines, different NPCs for different purposes. The Stranger seems to be the main motivation here with the pyramid ship because she was showing the other 2. She was showing Drifter and Eris about the pyramid ship because that's why she brought them there. But if the other 2 have certain tasks for us to do as well, it would actually be really cool to have 3 different NPCs on the same planet sending us on different storylines. Hopefully, a lot of different quests and paths that we get to go on. Finally, we've got to talk about underground and then a question mark. I have one more, wonder where it's going to be. We've got a lot of caves. Now, we've got caves that look different, actually. This is going to be the first set, the one that you guys can see right now. Now, oddly, because I can't find a better choice of phrase for this one, it looks like the walls are literally scooped out with something smooth. Now, I don't know if there's a chemistry reason for the way ice would form in this manner, but they look like there was a solid piece of ice, and it looks like it was slowly scooped out. It's the best way I can describe it. This is noticeable in a couple different screenshots that I've got in 2 different places. And again, the caves seem pretty large because you can see the Guardians here walking through. The open space within this cave seems a lot bigger than some of the other ones, especially like compare Mars caves. These seem pretty substantial with regards to the scale of the rooms that we're going to be in. Hopefully we get some pretty large areas to explore. Now this is a screenshot from the B-roll as well, where we can see again more of these scooped caves, but this is a really good shot to actually show the red energy inside the ice. Again, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just the, chemical nature of whatever made up the ice on Europa caused these red, veins and, energy look to it. Maybe it's just a reflection of light, but it seems to be all over. So it's one of those things. I'm still curious if that plays into anything or if it's just the look of the planet. But this is, again, underneath where we've got, looks like some paths that we're going to run on to explore around. Very specific looking ice, but again, it's that whole, scooped look, like somebody had issues, with a big giant spoon, scooping it out. Now, contrast this to what I'm going to show you next. Now, don't worry about the gun. Trust me, I'm going to talk about that towards the end, but look at the way these walls are shaped. They don't have those singular scooped looks, generally. We also look like we've got Vex in here, but these look like, you got ice hanging down that drip down and froze. You've got somewhat smoother walls, at least in, some question. The ones right here in the foreground may have a scoop or two, but as you get towards the enemies in the backdrop, they look like you've got more pillars to them. They're not quite as smooth and scooped out, definitely more kind of natural looking as opposed to almost unnatural. So these caves, they seem to be almost 2 different structures, the way the caves are built. Very kind of cool looking in here. Believe me, I'm going to cover the weapon towards the end. Don't worry. This is probably more of the shot, and this is where I was talking about Vex. They're 100% involved. This looks definitely underground as well, but probably from that big Vex pillar that was out of the ground. When we come down in here, we look more of what one of the entrances to the Pyramidion. Again, they have these big rectangular or square long pillars, and they build them in triangular shapes. Also looks like in the background we've got some glowing light, what looks to almost maybe be like a radiolaria waterfall. The Vex milk, if you were wondering what the hell I mean by that. And then up here again, we're looking on these flat ice structures. But again, it looks like we are underground for sure. So you've got the scooped out area, maybe that's closer towards the Fallen and one landing zone. You've got this area underground, definitely dealing with more Vex here for sure. Now there's 2 final places that I want to show you guys, basically because I'm not entirely sure where they're going to be. One is going to be here. Now, the only reason I say I'm not entirely sure where this is at, obviously it's Fallen, no question. You got the banners for the Fallen, House of Darkness emblem on them, Fallen architecture vomited all over this. For sure it's Fallen. The question is, where is it? It doesn't look like it's underground because it does look like there might be a sky above, but also on the other side we've got less weather effects in here because everything else outside seems to be 100% covered in snow. So this either is an interior of a building structure, maybe a inside of a building, I don't know, but it is definitely Fallen, kind of running along these corridors and lines and things like that, but very curious where all of this maps out to see how big Europa is and how many different places we're going to be going. Now the final one is just an awesome shot. This one could be like a wallpaper because you got Jupiter perfectly placed in the background between the 2 cavern walls, the weather effects outside. I don't know where this is going to be, but I hope I can find this screenshot in the game because this would make for some really cool wallpapers or, Bungie art shots for sure. So that's most of an exploration of the planet, looking at the areas that we're going to be exploring, some of the different architecture and places, both above ground, below ground, the towers. Lots to explore, and I'm really hoping this planet is kind of amazing because so far from what I'm seeing, lots of potential right here. So that wraps it up for this exploration of Europa. As I said, the next video that I do plan to do is going to be over the stasis powers for both the Hunter, the Warlock, and the Titan, and a little bit of a tease on the weapons we got to see as well. So stay tuned. If you haven't subbed to the channel yet, hit that subscribe button and the alert bell. I'm going to get that video out pretty much as soon as I can after this one gets posted, so both are coming pretty quick. Other than that, if you guys did enjoy this one, thank you, and drop that like button, leave a comment if you got questions. You can find me also on Twitch and Twitter. It's Ebontis on both, and we are doing the Last Word podcast in the morning. It's going to be 8 a.m. Central Time, so tune in for the Last Word podcast. We've got an awesome guest, Hoplite. She's one of the people who helps run Raid Secrets. So see you guys then, and enjoy.